The rain pounded against the glass walls of the penthouse, a relentless symphony echoing the turmoil within. Emma stood at the edge of opulence, her heart a tempest as she faced Julian, the stranger whose mere presence unraveled the carefully woven fabric of her life. In the space where luxury met longing, their eyes locked, a silent battlefield of raw attraction and dangerous secrets. The air crackled with electricity, and Emma knew the revelation of a staged death loomed like a shadow over their entwined paths. In that charged moment, the scales of ambition and desire tipped precariously, leaving Emma poised on the brink of a choice that could redefine everything. Chapter 1: The Enigmatic Encounter. The penthouse shimmered with an opulence that felt almost unreal, as if it were a scene torn from the pages of a glossy magazine. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over the crowd of elegantly dressed guests. Emma stood by the grand window, the city skyline glinting behind her like a constellation of earthly stars. She was the epitome of ambition, her sharp gaze surveying the room like a queen assessing her court. Emma had worked relentlessly to ascend the corporate ladder, her career a carefully crafted masterpiece of strategic decisions and tireless dedication. Tonight she was here to celebrate the fruition of her efforts, a promotion that placed her on the cusp of executive power. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and the soft hum of important conversations, a symphony of success and aspiration. But beneath her composed exterior, a restlessness brewed. Emma's heart beat to a different rhythm, a yearning for something she couldn't quite name. She sipped her champagne, the bubbles a tickling distraction, and tried to quell the inexplicable sense of anticipation that clung to her. It was in this moment of introspection that she felt a presence beside her. A man, striking in his quiet confidence, stood with an aura that seemed to command attention without demanding it. His gaze, intense and probing, met hers with a familiarity that was both unsettling and thrilling. "Enjoying the view?" His voice was smooth, like velvet draped over a steel frame. Emma was taken aback, not only by his sudden appearance, but by the immediate spark of intrigue he ignited within her. "The view is breathtaking," she replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her stomach. The stranger smiled, a subtle curve of lips that hinted at secrets untold. "The city's beauty pales in comparison to the ambition that builds it," he mused, his eyes never leaving hers. She laughed, a soft, genuine sound that surprised her. "And what about you? Are you here for the view or the ambition?" "A little of both," he admitted, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "But mostly, I'm here for the unexpected." Their conversation flowed like a well-choreographed dance, weaving between light banter and the underlying tension that neither could ignore. Emma found herself drawn to him, curious about the enigma wrapped in a bespoke suit. As the evening unfolded, she learned his name, Julian, and felt both a thrill and a wariness at the ease with which he entered her world. Julian's presence was intoxicating, his charm a dangerous allure that threatened to unravel the meticulously woven tapestry of her life. Yet beneath her polished exterior, Emma felt a fracture forming, the clash of her ambitious nature with the undeniable attraction she felt towards Julian. It was as if the universe had conspired to place this man in her path, challenging her to balance the scales of desire and aspiration. The night wore on, filled with laughter and stolen glances, each interaction deepening the connection between them. As the gala drew to a close, Emma stood once more at the window, contemplating the city that lay before her, a testament to dreams realized and dreams yet to be pursued. Julian joined her, the silent promise of their earlier exchange still hanging in the air. "Perhaps we will meet again," he said, his voice a soft echo of the night. Emma nodded, her heart a wild drumbeat against the walls of her chest. "Perhaps," she agreed, a smile playing on her lips. As he walked away, Emma felt the weight of her ambition shift, the scales tipping ever so slightly towards the unknown. The encounter had left her both thrilled and unsettled, a harbinger of the storm that lay ahead, an enigmatic stranger, weaving his way into the tapestry of her life, challenging her to redefine the boundaries of ambition and attraction. Chapter 2: The Dance of Temptation. The days that followed their first encounter seemed to conspire against Emma's peace of mind. In boardrooms and conference halls, her path intersected with Julian's, more often than she dared to acknowledge. Each meeting was a dance of its own, a careful choreography of glances and words that left her heart pounding, in ways that no corporate victory ever could. At first, Emma tried to dismiss her growing fascination with Julian as a fleeting distraction. Yet, each time their gazes met across a polished mahogany table, there was a spark, a recognition of shared ambition and understanding that was impossible to ignore. Julian had a knack for reading the room, his insights sharp and incisive, much like Emma's own. They were two minds cut from the same cloth, drawn to the challenge, the thrill of the corporate game. But where Emma's ambition was a driving force, a relentless pursuit of goals defined and refined over years, Julian seemed to dance with a fluidity that both intrigued and unsettled her. He moved through their circles with an effortless grace, a master at navigating the intricate webs of power and influence. It was this very quality that made her both admire and envy him, even as it left her questioning her own carefully laid plans. The invitations to social events came like clockwork, each one an opportunity to solidify alliances and gather intelligence. Emma accepted them with professional detachment, though she couldn't deny the thrill that coursed through her at the thought of seeing Julian again. And see him she did, at a glittering gala held in yet another opulent penthouse, the city's elite gathered under a canopy of crystal and ambition. The night was a tapestry of laughter and champagne, a blur of shimmering gowns and tailored suits. Emma navigated the event with practiced ease, exchanging pleasantries and promises with a smile that never faltered. Yet beneath the veneer of control, she felt the pull of Julian's presence, like a magnetic force, drawing her inexorably towards him. Their paths converged at the edge of the dance floor, where couples swayed to a slow, seductive rhythm. Julian extended his hand in a silent invitation, his eyes holding hers with a promise of something unspoken. Emma hesitated, the weight of her ambition battling the unfamiliar flutter of her heart. "Shall we?" His voice was a whisper against the backdrop of music, a temptation wrapped in velvet. She placed her hand in his, the touch sending a ripple of electricity up her spine. The world around them faded as they stepped onto the dance floor, the soft glow of chandeliers casting a halo over their entwined figures. In Julian's arms, Emma felt a surrender she hadn't anticipated, a yielding to the moment that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Their bodies moved in perfect harmony, the dance a metaphor for the delicate balance they were forced to maintain, between ambition and desire, between the lives they had built, and the uncharted territories of their hearts. With each step, Emma felt the layers of her resolve peeling away, exposing the raw, vulnerable core she had kept hidden for so long. Julian's touch was gentle yet commanding, guiding her through the dance with an intuition that matched her own. "You surprised me, Emma," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. She smiled, a genuine expression that felt like a revelation. "I surprised myself," she confessed, the admission slipping past her defenses. As the music swelled, Emma found herself leaning into Julian's embrace, the world outside their dance slipping further away. It was a moment suspended in time, a dangerous indulgence that spoke of possibilities she was both afraid to explore and reluctant to relinquish. When the music finally faded, they stood together in the center of the floor, the silence between them a living thing. Emma met his gaze, searching for something, perhaps a reassurance, perhaps a sign that he felt the same pull she did. Julian lifted her hand to his lips, brushing a kiss across her knuckles that sent a shiver through her. "Until next time," he said, his voice a promise wrapped in mystery. Emma nodded, her heart a wild symphony of conflicting emotions. As she watched him walk away, the scales of her life tipped ever so delicately, caught in the dance of temptation that left her both exhilarated and unsure of what lay ahead. Chapter 3. Secrets Unveiled. The morning sun slanted through the blinds of Emma's office, casting stripes of light across her desk, where a neat stack of documents lay untouched. Her mind was miles away, still tangled in the threads of the previous night's encounter. Julian's whispered words lingered in her thoughts like an echo in a cavern, elusive and insistent. The air in the office felt charged, heavy with the anticipation of something unsaid. Emma's fingers traced the rim of her coffee mug absent-mindedly as she replayed their dance over in her mind, trying to decipher the unspoken messages woven into their shared silence. A soft knock interrupted her reverie. Sarah, her assistant, slipped into the room carrying a glossy folder emblazoned with the logo of a rival company. "This just came in," Sarah said, her voice practical, unaware of the storm brewing beneath Emma's calm facade. Emma took the folder, flipping it open with practiced efficiency. Her eyes skimmed over the contents, her heartbeat quickening with each line. There, in black and white, was the evidence she had been blind to. Julian was not just any player in the corporate world. He was a key strategist for Archon Industries, the very company her firm had been locked in fierce competition with for months. A sharp intake of breath caught in her throat. The revelation hit her like a physical blow, unraveling the delicate web of attraction and intrigue that had drawn her to him. It was as though a mask had slipped, revealing the truth she had been too enchanted to see. Emma's mind raced, her thoughts a chaotic jumble of betrayal and doubt. The man who had seemed to understand her so profoundly was, in reality, a formidable adversary in the professional arena she had fought so hard to excel in. Her heart wavered between the thrill of their undeniable connection and the cold reality of their opposing loyalties. The rest of the day unfolded in a blur. Emma moved through meetings and conference calls with mechanical precision, her usual sharpness dulled by the weight of her discovery. Each interaction was tinged with the knowledge that her feelings for Julian were more complicated than she had ever imagined. As the afternoon sun dipped towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the cityscape beyond her window, Emma found herself drawn to the solitude of the rooftop terrace. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of impending rain. She leaned against the railing, her eyes scanning the skyline, as if searching for answers in the distance. Julian's presence lingered in her thoughts, a specter that refused to be banished. She remembered the warmth of his hand, the way his eyes had seemed to see through her defenses. Yet now those memories were tainted by the knowledge of his true role in her life. The door to the terrace creaked open, and Emma turned to find Julian standing there, his expression a mix of apprehension and resolve. The setting sun cast a golden glow over him, highlighting the intensity in his gaze. "Emma," he began, his voice steady yet tinged with an emotion she couldn't quite place. "I owe you an explanation." She crossed her arms, the gesture both protective and defiant. "I think I deserve one," she replied, her tone cool despite the turmoil inside her. Julian approached slowly, the space between them charged with unspoken words. "I never meant for things to get so complicated," he confessed, his eyes earnest. "When we met, I didn't anticipate this." Emma's heart ached at the vulnerability in his admission, but she steeled herself against the pull of his sincerity. "And yet, here we are," she said, her voice firmer now. "You're part of Archon, everything between us is compromise." He nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. "Yes, I'm with Archon, but Emma, what we have, what I feel, it isn't a strategy or a game, it's real." The intensity of his gaze held her captive, the truth of his words resonating deep within her. Yet the lines between personal and professional had never seemed more blurred. The mask, once a symbol of mystery, now lay shattered at their feet, exposing the raw, unfiltered truth of their entwined realities. Emma turned back to the cityscape, her mind a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. "I don't know how to reconcile this," she admitted softly, the vulnerability in her voice mirrored in her eyes. Julian stepped closer, closing the distance between them, until his presence was a comforting warmth at her side. "We'll find a way," he promised, his voice a low, steady reassurance. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Emma felt the weight of her choices yet to come. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but in Julian's unwavering gaze, she saw a glimmer of hope, a promise that perhaps, amidst the chaos, they could carve out a space for themselves. And as the rain washed over the city, she allowed herself to entertain the possibility that some secrets, once unveiled, could lead to new beginnings. Chapter 4. The Illusion Shattered. In the heart of the city that never seemed to sleep, Emma's world had been upended in a single revelation. As the city lights flickered to life below, the bustling energy of the metropolis seemed a cruel counterpoint to the stillness that gripped her heart. Her office, usually a sanctuary of order and control, now felt like a cage. The evening stretched on, the hum of traffic below a distant murmur. As she sat at her desk, the dossier from Archon Industries glaring up at her like an accusation. The truth about Julian was a jagged edge, cutting into the fabric of her carefully constructed life. How could she have been so blind, so easily ensnared by his allure? Her thoughts were a tumultuous sea, crashing against the shores of her reason. Julian's presence in her life had been a spark, lighting up corners of her soul she had long since ignored. Yet here she was, faced with the undeniable fact that he had faked his own death to escape some scandal, a deception that now flared between them like a live wire. A sharp rap on the glass door of her office pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. Julian stood there, his silhouette framed by the dim light of the hallway. Emma's heart skipped, a traitorous flutter that she quickly quelled. She squared her shoulders, a mask of professionalism slipping into place as she gestured him in. "Emma," he began, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken apologies. "I know how this looks, and I can't excuse what I've done, but I need you to understand why." She met his gaze, her eyes searching his for answers she wasn't sure she wanted. "Why, Julian? Why would you let everyone believe, you were dead?" He sighed, a sound heavy with regret. "There were people, powerful people, who wanted to see me fall for something I didn't do. Faking my death was the only way to escape their reach and regroup. I never imagined it would lead me to you." The sincerity in his voice was a lifeline she desperately wanted to grasp, but the betrayal was a weight she couldn't easily shed. "And yet, here we are," she echoed his earlier words, bitterness threading through her tone. Julian stepped closer, the space between them charged with the tension of everything unsaid. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that what I feel for you, it's real, more real than anything I've felt in a long time." Emma's heart warred with her mind. She could feel the truth of his words pulling at her, tempting her to believe. But every instinct screamed caution. "You must realize how impossible this is," she said, her voice a tightrope walk between longing and logic. "I do," he replied, his gaze never wavering. "But impossible has never stopped me before, and I don't think it should stop us now." A silence fell between them, thick with the weight of their entwined fates. Outside, the city pulsed with life, a reminder of the world that continued beyond their personal storm. Emma's mind raced, caught in the crossfire of duty and desire. The rain began to patter against the windows, a rhythmic reminder of the passage of time. Emma turned towards the sound, her thoughts aligning with the falling droplets, clear, deliberate, and unrelenting. She took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the evening air seep into her bones. "Julian," she said, her voice softer now, "you've given me a lot to consider, but I need time to sort through this mess and decide what's best for me." He nodded, acceptance in his eyes, though his disappointment was palpable. "Take all the time you need, Emma. I'll be here, hoping you'll find a way to let me in." As he turned to leave, Emma felt the pull of his presence, a magnetic force that left her both fortified and fractured. She watched him go, the rain blurring his retreating figure through the glass, and realized that the illusion might be shattered, but amidst the shards lay the potential for something more profound, something worth fighting for. And as the storm outside crescendoed, Emma knew that her path, though fraught with uncertainty, was one she would have to navigate with both heart and head, balancing the fragile line between ambition and the unexpected promise of love. Chapter 5. Collision of Worlds. The city skyline was an intricate tapestry of light and shadow, reflecting the turmoil within Emma's soul. She stood by her office window, watching the storm clouds gather, each rumble of thunder echoing the conflict that simmered between career and heart. Her office, usually a fortress of calm and control, now mirrored the chaos within her. The revelation of Julian's true identity had been a seismic shift. The man who had sparked something deep and untamed within her was also her professional adversary. The duality of her emotions was exhausting and thrilling. Each encounter with Julian felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane, intense, exhilarating, and terrifying. Tonight, as the storm raged outside, the tempest within her was no less fierce. Her phone buzzed with messages from colleagues and emails demanding attention, but her mind was anchored in the memory of Julian's earnest gaze, his confession of love that both condemned and redeemed him. The rain lashed against the glass, a relentless reminder of the decision she faced. Could she tether her ambitions to a life intertwined with Julian's, with all his complexities and shadows? Or was her path to be solitary, unencumbered by the risks of love? A knock at her door jolted her, and she turned to see Julian standing there, his presence as electrifying as the storm itself. His hair was damp from the rain, droplets glistening like diamonds on his skin. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. "Emma," he began, his voice a gentle plea amidst the storm's fury. "I didn't come to sway you or to press for decisions that might not be ready to surface. I just needed to see you." She crossed her arms, a feeble barrier against the warmth that spread through her at his words. "Julian, every time I think I've figured out where we stand, something shifts. It's like trying to hold on to water." He nodded, stepping closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know, and I want to promise you that I will be the rock in this storm, not another wave crashing against you." The sincerity of his words washed over her like a balm. She wanted to believe, to trust that this collision of worlds could somehow lead to something beautiful. But doubts lingered, whispering caution in her ear. "I need to understand," she said, her voice steady despite the quiver in her heart. "How can we move forward when our worlds are at odds, when every step we take together feels like a betrayal of everything I've worked for?" Julian's gaze softened, and he reached out, his fingers brushing against hers in a tentative connection. "What if we didn't let our worlds define us? What if we created something new, something that belongs to us and no one else?" A flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting shadows that danced across their faces. Emma searched his eyes, seeing not just the man who had disrupted her life, but the possibility of a future that was her own, shaped by both love and ambition. The storm outside was a symphony of chaos, but in that moment, a fragile peace settled over her. Perhaps there was a way to reconcile the seemingly irreconcilable, to embrace the passion that Julian ignited while still holding true to her dreams. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision lift slightly. "All right," she said softly. "Let's try, but know this. I'm not giving up on my ambitions. I want us to be a part of each other's worlds, not the reason they collapse." A look of relief washed over Julian's face, and he squeezed her hand, a silent promise exchanged between them. Outside, the storm began to abate, the rain softening to a gentle patter, as if acknowledging their tentative truce. As they stood together, the city lights below casting a warm glow through the dissipating clouds, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Their worlds may have collided, but in the aftermath lay the potential for something extraordinary, a union that defied the chaos, promising a journey both daunting and exhilarating. Chapter 6. The Unmasked Truth. The morning fog shrouded the city, blurring the sharp edges of skyscrapers into gentle silhouettes. Emma stood on her balcony, the cool air invigorating as she sipped her coffee, her mind clearer than it had been in weeks. Today's meeting with Julian would determine the course of their intertwined futures. She arrived at the Riverside Cafe early, the air tinged with the scent of fresh pastries and roasted coffee beans. The setting was intimate, a perfect backdrop for the conversation she hoped would finally unmask the truth balancing love and ambition. Julian joined her moments later, a touch of apprehension shadowing his usually confident demeanor. His eyes held hers with an intensity that spoke of sincerity and vulnerability. "Emma," he began, his voice steady yet charged with emotion. "I've thought a lot about what you said, about how we can be in each other's worlds without tearing them down." She nodded, encouraged by his openness. "And?" "I've decided to step back from Archon," he revealed, the weight of his decision evident in his expression. "I want to build something new, something honest, with you if you'll have me." Emma's heart skipped, a mixture of surprise and relief washing over her. She leaned forward, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "Julian, I don't want you to give up everything for me, but this is a start." His gaze softened, gratitude and hope mingling in his features. "And your ambitions?" "They haven't changed," she replied, her voice firm yet tender. "But neither has my desire to see where this can go. We can forge a path together, one that respects who we are individually and as partners." Julian smiled, a warmth that ignited a spark in the depths of her soul. "Then let's do it. Let's create something that's ours." Their conversation flowed, weaving plans and possibilities into a tapestry of shared dreams. The world outside continued its relentless pace, yet in that small cafe time seemed to pause, granting them a rare moment of clarity and connection. As they left, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the city in golden hues. Emma felt a lightness in her step, as if the tension of the past weeks had finally dissipated, leaving room for hope to take root. Julian walked beside her, their fingers intertwined, each step a testament to the fragile balance they had begun to find. Their journey was just beginning, a venture into uncharted territories where love and ambition could coexist. Later that evening, as night draped the city in its velvet cloak, Emma stood before her mirror, studying her reflection. She slowly removed a mask she'd kept hidden, a symbol of the duality she had struggled with. The mask shattered as it hit the floor, a fitting end to the barrier she had placed between her heart and her dreams. In its place, Emma wore a new resolve, one that embraced both her career aspirations and the love she had found with Julian. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their worlds, crafting a narrative uniquely their own. As she turned off the lights and climbed into bed, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time, her heart and her ambitions were no longer at odds. They were allies, poised for the adventure ahead.